So I was thinking, I had this conversation the other day with a parent, and she was talking about perfectionism in her life and how that can really backfire on her. And so I started thinking about that, and perfectionism is something that I have definitely struggled with, but also in my clients, I see this all the time. And I started thinking about Scarlett. We'll call her Scarlett, okay? One of my clients who, she was raised by this totally perfectionist and overbearing mother. And, they had such conflict all the time, clashing and pain and suffering. And it was so hard. And as soon as Scarlett was able to, she was out of there. And as soon as Scarlett was able to, she was like, that's enough, Mom. I'm done. And she went on with her life, and she left, and she actually didn't have any contact with her mom for a long time because she knew that when she came back to her mom, she was going to get a lot of criticism. She was going to get a lot of shaming about her body. She was going to get a lot of shaming about her choices in life. And she was like, yeah, you know what? I don't need that. And she did a lot of healing around this, right? And she thought, okay, good. Now I've got this. I'm going to go. And she fell in love. She got married. She had a few kids. And then, you know what's coming, right? You know what's coming because we all have this thing. And what happened is, as she was raising her own children, a lot of this stuff came back. This perfectionism. She found herself looking at her kids and saying, don't do it this way. Why do you do it like that? And she found herself picking at them. Yes, a lot of the same patterns that she really thought that she had healed started coming back up again when she started raising her children. And fortunately, she's brilliant, and so she went and she got some help, and she starts ripping through this stuff and kind of, figuring out, like, why do I do this, and how can I not do this to my kids, right? And it was worth it for her. She's gained so much. She's made so much progress. And she had really identified for herself that perfectionism was something that was really slowly killing her. So for Scarlett, it was taking away her joy. It was also taking away everything else that was good in her relationships. So today, I'm going to talk about perfectionism and how we can identify it and see it and try to work through some different ways. Hi everybody, I'm Ann O'Connor with Metamorphics, where we help you become who you want to be. And so thank you for being here with me today on my live broadcast. I'm so happy that you're here. Perfectionism is something that probably you've had some dealings with in your life because most of us do, right? And so let's identify, like, what does that mean? And perfectionism shows up in a lot of different ways. It's kind of sneaky. It's kind of a sneaky deal. So perfectionism can look like having impossible standards, right? Impossible standards. I can't do this thing unless I'm the best at it. I can't do this thing unless I already know how to be great. Perfectionism can look like picking apart, right? Like maybe I do something, but then I pick it apart and I say, well, I could have done this better and that could have been better and that. And if we're not doing that to ourselves in our work, guess who else we're doing it to? Right? You're doing it to people you love. You're doing it to your friends. You're doing it to your lover. You're doing it to your kids. You're doing it to all the people in there. You're driving them crazy, okay? You're driving them crazy. And you might be driving yourself crazy too. Because why? Because perfectionism is the killer of joy and all good things. That's why. So don't do it. Okay, here's why. Here's how. It's so hard. It's so hard. But it doesn't have to be, because you get better at it and you progress through something, right? So the impossible standards, the picking at things, and this plays out in our lives in all kinds of ways. It starts to affect our health. It starts to affect our work, our finances, all kinds of things. Because what happens when you have these impossibly high standards? What do perfectionists do? A lot of times they either start and it's going along and they're super excited, and then what happens? They stop because it's not quite right. You're not quite ready. It's not quite doing exactly how you want it to do. And the other thing that they do is they don't start at all, okay? How many of you have procrastinated on something that is important to you? How many of us have, put off and said, I'm going to get to that tomorrow, well, it doesn't always work that way. And the perfectionism actually stops us from doing the very things that are good for us, that are good for our relationships, that are good for our health. And so it's better to do it imperfectly than it is to not do it, because you're going to do it perfectly. One of the things that is true is that we have good relationships when we accept one another's humanity. That's all that we want from each other. Really, we want to accept each other's humanity. We want to be supported. We want to be seen, and we want to be uplifted. And if you're being a perfectionist with yourself, you're not doing those things for yourself. And if you're being a perfectionist when you're looking at other people and you're criticizing them and how they do things and what and blah blah blah, even if you do it in the name of teaching, right? Even if you do it in the name of like, here's a lesson that you have to learn, kid. Let me show you. It just doesn't work that way. People learn best when they are relaxed, when they're comfortable, when they feel safe and secure. That's where the learning comes, right? That's where the creativity comes. And perfectionism actually dampens all of that. It stomps it down. And that's like who we really want to be. That's where we want to live. We want to live in support. We want to live in finding the good things, okay? So, being human, you don't get to be perfect. You just don't get to. And in its own way, that's perfect, right? Like, because nobody's perfect, then it's perfect. Doesn't that make sense? It might make sense. You can get it. So here's what I want to say. The procrastination and the picking thing is super unpleasant and really difficult. And so if you have these things that make you procrastinate, like, right, I'm not good enough, or the timing isn't right, or, I don't have the right equipment, or whatever it is. Oh my God, I've been there so many times. I just dropped my notes. Hang on one second. So that I can be coherent with you, so I don't have to be perfect, but I do want to have my notes, right? And so if you're doing that, you're going to increase your stress. You're going to increase your stress for yourself, and you're going to increase your stress for your people. And every situation, right? The room is going to be stressful. It's going to be hard. You're going to increase conflict, because some people are going to come back at you, and they're going to point out that you're being a little bit out of bounds, or maybe crazy. Okay, crazy is a really imprecise word. But the point is that some people are going to say, I can never do it right for you. I can't make you happy. Oh, ouch, gah! Right? Have you been there? I've been there. That is a hard place to be, my friends. So yeah, let's not do that to ourselves. Let's not do that to our people. If you're going to stay with this perfectionism in your life, you're going to increase your disappointment, your sadness, all these things. They just get worse, because perfectionism is the killer of joy. All right, so if you are accepting this as your way, and you're not interested in changing it, what you're going to create for your life is, it's almost like opposite day. So I was thinking about this, like, when we're a perfectionist, the reason that we're a perfectionist is because we care so much, right? We care so much that we want to do everything just right. We want it to be really good. And when we do that, sometimes it backfires. And this is what this mom was talking about the other day, who I was talking to. It's like you try so hard to give everything just right, and in that you become kind of smothery. You become kind of smothery. You become kind of controlling. And so it's kind of the opposite. You create the opposite of what you're actually hoping to create. Ouch. Who wants to do that? Who wants opposite day? Nobody wants that, right? So I can almost hear, I wanted to tell this story about this guy. He was a doctor, and I can't remember where I heard this story. I don't know this story. I just heard it somewhere, but it's a great story. And this guy was a doctor, and he had a bunch of kids, and his kids were super active. They played sports, they played baseball, they were out in the yard, they had their big wheels out, they built forts. And as they did all this really great interactive kid stuff, the lawn in their front yard got kind of, mangled, and there were like patches of dirt showing, and bikes all over, and there were, it was kind of a very active yard. And his neighbor came over and was like, "Hey, you can like yard sorry you can cut this yard off and tape it off and not let your kids go on it, and you could build that grass back, and your yard would look a lot better." And the doctor looked at him and he said this great thing, and he said, "Right now I'm raising kids, and I'll worry about raising grass another time." And I love that because human beings are messy, kids are messy. We are not linear thinkers. We are not, we don't go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing in absolute succession. And in fact, I wanted to tell you about this article that I read last month in The Atlantic. It's this woman, and I don't know her, but she had a great piece in there. She's probably worth finding out more about. Her name, what is her name? Madeline Levine. And she's a psychologist out of San Francisco. And she talks about how she goes around the country and she gives all these talks, and she always asks people, because she's writing in The Atlantic last month about people who are really hard on their kids, and they have them in every sport and every scholastic possibility, and they have them on teams, and they're really highly scheduled, and they have this perspective of getting into the right college and getting the right score on your ACT and SATs, and they're doing all the right things so that you can have the right life. And this is perfectionism at its finest, right? When we're trying to control the outcomes, we're always trying to control what happens. And the fact is, life is much messier than that. Humans are much messier than that. And so in this article, which I recommend you looking up, she tells this great story about she's spoken in front of thousands and thousands of people, and she always does this thing. She puts up a slide up on the board, and she says she has one slide that has a straight arrow, just a straight line, very linear, going up into success. And that's one line. And then the next line is a line that starts off and it kind of curves and twists and turns and goes all over, and then eventually makes its way to success, but is not linear. It is much more complicated, much messier line. And she asks every single audience, who had the straight line? And who had the messier line to get to success? And over again, what she finds is that people in her audiences, like 90% of them, say that they had the more complicated, more messy, more divergent line, right? Not many people just go straight to their success and find what they're here to do and just do that. So I think one of the things about perfectionism is we have to be able to trust ourselves, and we have to be able to trust our children that they will figure it out. That's what we all have to do. We all have to figure it out. And that can look messy, but it's okay. So the other thing, all right, now I can almost hear some of you, because I could hear myself saying, but if you don't have high standards, you're gonna get garbage, right? If you don't aim for the best, what are you aiming for? And I hear you, right? I am not in any way suggesting that you don't aim high. We want to aim for excellence, right? So here are some things, some very practical things that I know perfectionists love. They love perfection. Perfectionists love to have give me something I can grab onto, right? A way that I can move forward that makes sense. All right, so here are a few of those. Aim for excellence, not perfection, right? Maybe you know this expression, progress, not perfection. And we're always aiming for progress, and to trust that progress and trust that it's going somewhere good, and that we can trust ourselves in that. That's a beautiful thing, that we're not perfect right now. We're not ever going to be perfect, but it's okay. We can keep aiming towards progress, towards excellence. So that's one thing we can do. The other thing that we can do is you can seek the good, right? You can look for all the things that are awesome, all the things that are good. If you're in a project and it's stumbling, it's hard and it's challenging, that is just to be expected. So in that, can you find what is working? Can you talk about that? Can you live into that? Can you share that with people? When you look at your kid, can you see all the ways that they are blooming and becoming who they need to be? for themselves, not for who you need them to be, right? But for who they need to be. And we don't always know that. I don't care what kind of a parent you are. I don't care how great at parenting you are. You don't always know what your kid needs. And sometimes when you think you do, and you really are clear about it, that's the best time to step back and say, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should trust this process. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to find the things about my kid that I love and that I appreciate and that I can see progress in. And I'm going to point out, if I say anything at all, I'm going to point out like, hey, you're working really hard. Or you're going to point out progress, right? Okay, so that's another thing you can do is you can find the good, seek what's working. It'll help you balance out that natural instinct to look and see what's not working, right? It's easy to see what's not working. Go and look for the good. And the last thing that you can do is do it anyway, okay? So this is, the do it anyway is like a principle that I love because I promise you I would almost get nothing done if I didn't do it anyway. All right, so what do I mean by that? Well, I'm guessing that, like most people, you probably have some things that you have waiting for you to do, right? And so maybe it's a project that you're ready to start or something that you're excited about, and you're just waiting for the right moment or for this next thing to finish so that you can get to it, or you're waiting for the space to open up, or you're waiting for the right piece of equipment, right? And I want to just say, just do it anyway, because that's perfectionism stopping you. Most likely it is. You know, if you can just mail the birthday card, even though it's not perfect, if you can start the project, even though you don't have everything you need, if you can just do it anyway, you will learn and you will figure it out, because that's what we do as humans. And when you don't start, and when you don't, you know, I just remember one time my grandmother, I was about 14, I guess. Now, yeah, somewhere in there, 13, 14 years old. And I had this letter that I was writing to my grandmother. And I kept intending to mail it. And I finished it. I had it in an envelope. So you know what happens next, right? My grandmother died. I never sent her that letter. I never did. She never got it. And I know she knows that I loved her. But it would have been so good for me to have sent her that letter. And I never got the chance because I procrastinated. And procrastination is the other side of the coin of perfectionism. So don't let it take you down. Don't let it ruin your relationships. And do it anyway. Even if it's not good enough. Even if it's not perfect. Even if people are going to laugh at you. Even if, you know, whatever is stopping you, do it anyway. If you have a passion that you're not picking up, if you have a purpose, an idea, a thought, a relationship, a conversation that you want to have, do it. Just do it anyway. So, those are the things that I have for you today about how to not let perfectionism be the killer of joy and all good things, and to do these other things instead, to seek excellence, to make progress, not seek perfection, to do it anyway, and to seek the good, right? Seek the good. So that's what I have. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Like this video, share this video, like my page. I've got some really great work coming your way. You don't want to miss any of it, I promise you. And I will see you again tomorrow. It's Ann O'Connor with Metamorphics, signing off.